Well, thank you. So it's my job to hurry the rest of the panel through the next 20 minutes. We have learned that the medical scientists don't really know what to say, but hopefully it doesn't matter. Now I turn to those who are the target of our information. What information do you need and what format would you prefer to get it? So I want to start with Andrej Kobe from the DG Environment. Could you comment on this, please?
Yes. Hi, good afternoon. Okay, let me start it pretty much with what Aaron was trying to present, and in a sense, I think it is showing pretty well in Europe as well. I mean, the public is being aware, has pushed also the politicians, and there are measures being taken, and so. But starting with this, I'll also just then give an opinion, or let's say an experience through the Clean Air for Europe program, which I participated in. And yes, as mentioned earlier, we communicated both of this in both ways. And from my personal experience, being in a process, it didn't really matter which one was. It was partially irrelevant in a sense of what is the impact to the policymaker. I wouldn't say I'm disillusioned with a policy process, but we are kind of extreme pragmatists in this. So both are very well able to communicate that air pollution is bad, something needs to be done about it. So and then it becomes just a one element in a much bigger play of these conflicting interests and so on. And I'll just give you an example with probably one of the best, I would say, integrated assessments and cost-benefit analysis, everything we were able to throw in, we have thrown in the Clean Air for Europe program. The end policy ambition level taken in the thematic strategy on air pollution, you can follow the end result. It was 6-to-1 in terms of benefits versus costs, where the kind of ambition level was set. So you can understand there are a lot of competing interests. Information was there, yet the level was set as where it was. What is important, however, is to mention that what was deteriorating for the discussion was the fact that there was these disagreements in terms of which metric to use and so on. It was just adding sometimes to the confusion, sometimes to helping those that were trying to deliberately put some confusion into the process to basically throw some sand in the wheels, so to speak. And that really didn't help. So whatever we have to communicate, I would say, let's get it well accepted, and let's not introduce this discussion, which we started this panel, into the domain when we are actually discussing the policy options. It really doesn't help. And then I would also say I'm pretty much with Nino when in his recommendations where he was saying, well, let's try to put whatever we know into this also summary indices, or however you want to call them, this information also about morbidity, the fact that we have through different spatial resolutions, or through the fact that you are taking either, you have also this kind of additional traffic contributions and so on. All these things should be included to the extent possible. So all the information from the exposure should be kind of included into the whole discussion. Otherwise it gets forgotten and just kind of loses. And in a sense, if it's included, it's also then easier to communicate then. And then now I'm getting to the final and probably most important point. It's not just in the policy development process where you need this kind of information to set a certain target. So I think it's a very important continuous struggle that we have to have. Also, once even some legal tools are in place and so on, what we need is actually smart implementation, taking the right measures, basically introducing to the extent also in a software, I would say smart is probably the best way. Implement those and try to comply with the legislation and so on in the smartest way possible in order to maximize the health benefits. So always think about what will the measure bring, and that's why it's important we have the proper metrics and we are able to monitor how it's being implemented, and if we're able then also to assess that there are health benefits and so on. We should get them out in the open. The success stories are bread and butter for the policymakers. We need them, otherwise we cannot push forward.
Well, thank you. I think this was very valuable input, and it really leads me on to our host country, because Ireland was quite successful, for example, with the coal ban. And Micheal, what was the information which mostly helped you to achieve this success?
Okay, thanks. My name is Micheal Young from the Department of the Environment, the Minister for Environment here. Just from a national perspective, I'd just say Ireland has relatively good air quality, at least in comparison to Hong Kong. We're not here entirely responsible for that. Economic developments mean we have very little heavy industry, very little smokestack industry. We've got prevailing southwesterly winds which bring clean air from the Atlantic for us as well. And also the industry and our current vehicle fleet are comparatively modern and comparatively efficient, so we don't have major drivers for pollution. We did have one challenge to air quality, I think, in the past, and this was back in the 80s in the major cities. We had major smogs resulting from the use of solid fuel in domestic dwellings, and that was largely dealt with by a very effective policy prescription, which was banning the use of bituminous coal in the larger cities. It was introduced in Dublin in 1990 and the other cities in 95 and 98. And that's largely solved the problem. It was effectively a ban on the sale of coal rather than the use of coal. So within the bigger cities where it's not practicable for people to move outside the cities to get their fuel, it worked very effectively. But as we rolled out the ban to smaller and smaller towns, it's seen to be less effective because people, as part of their daily duties, can go in and out of the town and acquire smoky coal. So that was very effective. And ironically, when we do get complaints, anecdotal evidence of bad air quality, it's from the smaller towns now rather than from the bigger cities. But the monitoring carried out by our National Environmental Protection Agency shows that there's good air quality across the country, and we're complying with all, say, the EU national air quality standards. From a policy perspective, just briefly, I'd say there's three areas that I'd say are important for the policymaker. One is that you have a good evidence base. Obviously, as a policymaker, you're making a decision in the context of competing arguments. With any policy, there's usually winners and losers. There's the winners in terms of our benefits will fall more broadly dispersed across the population in terms of probably small and very difficult to realise and appreciate health benefits. But the costs fall on a discrete number of people, very focused and very tangible benefits. They come in and they present the case in a very tangible way, usually in pounds, shillings and pence, or euros and cents. So it's very clear and very tangible. So from our perspective, when you look at the evidence base and the benefits, it's very valuable, and it's not the only metric to use, but having monetized benefits is very valuable because at least you can counter the bottom line argument that the benefits do exceed the costs, and then you can look at the more nuanced argument of the various different factors. So that's very important. I think it's also important that the data should be comprehensive, and that even in the environment sphere, when you introduce one policy, that it's not countereffective in another. So you'll know this in the air quality community, but the climate change has got huge political profile, and the measures being introduced to address climate change, and by and large there are synergies between the two if you address fossil fuel. But in the area of, say, biofuels and biomass, there could be significant implications for health impacts in terms of PAHs and NOx and particulate matter. And that isn't always picked up in the evidence that's presented because of the rush to promote climate policies. I suppose finally the last point I'd make is in terms of public awareness. Obviously when a politician, ultimately the policymaker provides the evidence for the politician to make it, to sign into law regulations. They've got very focused evidence of the costs usually, but not the benefits. And one of the main incentives for a politician in democratic societies is re-election. So public awareness is very important, that you have a public driver. Now, air quality in Ireland is not a very significant issue in national terms because air quality is perceived to be relatively good, and I think Ireland is the only country of the EU27, for example, complying with the PM10s. But I was over in the States recently, and I was struck. I was down in one of the national parks, and I noticed alongside the notice boards for information on the flora and fauna, there was information on air quality, on long-range transport of pollutants, and quite a lot of detail on acidification, eutrophication effects on the flora, and also on visibility. And I thought, in a context where people were appreciating an amenity and environment, it brought home the connection very much between the damage caused by air pollution and the damage to amenity that are enjoyed. So I'll leave it there. Thanks, Chairman.
Well,